Hi, this is Brittany Madison, and you're watching Dante's Boxing Nation.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? Okay, so Gervonta Tank Davis, he just did a recent interview on a channel named Mr. J Hill Network. And there's so much to talk about, I gotta break this down in subjects. But for this video, I wanna start with this. So the guy who's asking Gervonta questions, he says to him, why Roach? Why did you decide to choose Roach as your very next opponent? And this is not the first time that Gervonta has been asked this question, but for some reason, he never answers the question by saying we were originally supposed to fight Lomachenko in the unification bout. We were in negotiations and Lomachenko, he pulled out of the fight. And there were other top names that turned down the fight as well. Instead, this is the way he answers it.
So March 1st, Gervonta Tank Davis versus Lamont Roach. Okay, this ain't for the fans. It's for me.
Okay, so before we even get into what Davis says, let's go ahead and first address what this guy just said right now. He tells Gervonta to his face, this is not for the fans. Now, just keep in mind, guys, the only time Gervonta usually does exclusive interviews is when he's promoting his fights. Because after he gets his win, we don't usually see him do any interviews. Now, fair enough, the Lamont Roach fight is not a big fight, especially not as big as the Lomachenko fight would have been. The Lomachenko fight, it would have been huge. It would have been one of the biggest fights of the year. But going back to this guy who's asking Gervonta the questions, he goes from saying that, the Roach fight is not for the fans. Then he starts saying, why were you giving him so much respect at the press conference? Why were you talking about this is a tough fight? He's a good fighter. And he's saying to Gervonta, man, you don't really believe none of that stuff, do you?
Why him? Why Roach? Out of all the people.
I think a lot of people was, they had a scheduled fight. For sure they had a scheduled fight coming up.
Now, this is the part where Gervonta, he officially joins the Teofimo Lopez boycott.
And another thing with the Teofimo, he kept saying all this wild shit like monkey this, monkey that, and like he disrespected me as a man, so that's another reason why I wouldn't give him a fight, for sure. But I would fight him, so I don't know, it just, the other guys was definitely had a fight coming up, so it was like who I can really fight. You feel me? And he was the one that was calling, or if I'm not mistaken, he was calling, saying that he wanted to fight, and it's like, why not help him? Help his situation. So.
And I like that, right?
Okay, now this is the part where this guy, he talks about Gervonta just trying to sell this fight, and Gervonta doesn't really believe it's a tough fight. If Gervonta were to listen to this guy and think the way he thinks, he'd probably get Gervonta knocked out.
But during these press conferences, you give him a lot of respect. Like, is this to sell a fight, or is it like to really believe it?
Nah, I mean,
like really though,
because the only reason why, because he is good. Like, don't get me wrong, but come on, like I mean, he's good, but when it comes to fight night, like, it's gonna be a whole different beast. Like,
that's what we thinking.
It's not gonna be no respect. Hell no.
But in the press conference, you give him respect. Like, no, he's a tough fighter. I'm like, Tank, you don't even believe this shit.
No, he is a tough fighter though.
For sure.
Now, the more I started to listen to this interview, the more I started to realize the guy who's interviewing Gervonta is a very casual boxing fan. And this is the reason why it's so difficult for me to listen to interviews when boxers do these type of podcast interviews, where it'll be a variety type of show or some type of hip hop podcast. The majority of those type of people, they don't really follow the sport that closely. And this interview was further proof of that. I mean, for starters, going back to when this guy was asking Gervonta, or when he was telling him, you don't really believe that this is a tough fight, et cetera, if he really has been paying attention to Gervonta's career and everything that Gervonta says at press conferences to promote his fights, Gervonta says whatever is on his mind. He doesn't have a filter. He's not politically correct. He's not going to get on stage and lie about his opponent just to promote the fight. If that was the case, he could have did that with Rolly Romero. He could have told people, Rolly Romero, oh man, this is going to be a tough fight. He's really smart. Rolly does this very well, et cetera, et cetera. But Gervonta didn't do that. Instead, he talked as if it was going to be a very easy fight. Gervonta is not just a very intelligent boxer in the ring, but when he talks about boxing, he's very intelligent. So when he's trying to explain to this guy who's interviewing him that, no, this is a competitive fight. This guy, he has sneaky power, he's smart, and not to mention Gervonta has already been in a ring with him. Just because it's not a big fight doesn't mean it's not going to be a tough fight. Styles definitely make fights. But this guy, Jay Hill, he goes even further than just asking Gervonta or telling Gervonta this fight is not for the fans, because right after he says that, then he even discredits Gervonta for fighting against Frank Martin as well, which then started to come off as if this guy is the type of fan that just reads all the comments on the internet and whatever is their popular narrative, he will follow it. Because if you have been following the sport closely, then you know that outside of Shakur Stevenson and Vasyl Lomachenko, at the time, the biggest fight next to those two guys was against the undefeated Frank Martin. In fact, you guys heard me say that way before that fight was announced. I said, if Gervonta is not fighting against Lomachenko or Shakur next, he needs to be fighting against Frank Martin. And he ended up fighting against Frank Martin. And after the Frank Martin fight, they tried to make the Vasyl Lomachenko fight. And we know Lomachenko did not want the smoke.
But again, when we talk about Tank, right? I mean, I wouldn't even, to be respectfully, I fuck with you, but I'm be real. I wouldn't even, Frank Martin, I didn't understand.
Frank was top 10.
Again, when it comes to Tank, I ain't understand it.
Yeah, you definitely didn't understand it. So we seen Gervonta's reaction when this guy Hill, when he said, this Roach fight is not for the fans. And we seen Davis, he laughed. But then when this guy started to discredit Frank Martin, that's when even Gervonta put a confused look on his face like, what? And then Gervonta had to educate this guy as if he was talking to someone who doesn't really follow the sport that well. Now, the natural assumption would be if this guy is discrediting Roach, he's discrediting Frank Martin, he's going to say, Gervonta, you need to be fighting Shakur Stevenson or Keyshawn Davis. Or at least once again, that's what you would think that maybe he's leading to. So Gervonta did something I've never seen him do before in an interview. He asked the guy, who do you think I should fight? Or who do you think is the highest ranked? And when Gervonta asked that question, the guy, he doesn't say anything for a second. So Gervonta, he throws out Shakur's name. He says, Shakur? And the guy says, no, not Shakur. I think you should fight Teo, or you should fight Ryan Garcia in a rematch. And the funny thing, this guy Hill, he tells Gervonta, you should fight Teo. That was right after Gervonta had already told him, I'm not fighting Teo after all that racist stuff he said.
Again, when we talk about Tank, right? I wouldn't even, to be respectfully, I fuck with you, but I'm be real. I wouldn't even, Frank Martin, I didn't understand.
Frank was top 10.
Again, when it comes to Tank, I ain't understand it.
But okay, listen.
I'm just being real.
Now we gotta go. Now we gotta look at. Okay, who would you say somebody that's a top fighter for me to fight right now?
Okay, right now?
Yeah. Shakur.
I wouldn't say Shakur. But people want Shakur.
What does that mean? You don't want it, but the people want it? Roach ain't it. You didn't understand the Frank Martin fight, and you don't want to see the Shakur fight or the Keyshawn fight. Now, this guy said he didn't understand the Frank Martin fight. I don't understand this logic.
Shakur, I would go maybe Teo. I would say maybe Ryan rematch again, only because of what he did to Devin Haney. I would have said Devin Haney before the Ryan shit.
They got a couple fights.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Yeah.
I'm lined up. I think he fighting somebody. He fighting Rolly. He fighting Rolly, then he fighting Devin again. Like, they got fights coming up. They got shit lined up already.
And the guys that don't have shit lined up are Shakur Stevenson and Keyshawn Davis. Shakur is tentatively scheduled to fight against William Zepeda, but that fight could easily be bypassed for the mega fight against Gervonta. And William Zepeda doesn't even want to fight Shakur. He would rather fight Tevin Farmer in a rematch and probably even do a rubber match with him. Now, clearly, Gervonta versus Shakur Stevenson, I would say right now, is probably the biggest fight in the sport right now, or it is just as big as the Canelo versus Crawford fight. Now listen, while black fighters are talking about boycotting Teofimo Lopez, the only way this is going to be effective is if all of the big name black fighters participate in the boycott. But if someone like Jaron Ennis is going to decide to fight Teofimo Lopez in the near future and ignore the boycott, then I would think Gervonta versus Teo, that fight would make more sense. But we just have to see how things play out in the near future. I mean, right now, Teofimo, he's not that relevant. We'll see if that changes by the end of the year. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one. Let me tell you guys about Issa Israel Law Firm. It is a full-service legal practice based in Denver, Colorado, an emerging hub for combat sports and high-altitude training. If you're a fighter inside or outside of the ring and you need a law firm you can trust to fight for you, visit thefighterfirm.com or email help@iilawfirm.com. Legal representation is usually limited to plaintiffs or defendants in Colorado, but iFirm can help anyone in the world with trademarking their business name, logos, and U.S. immigration issues. This brother has been my attorney for a while and helped guide me through all kinds of business and civil issues, so make sure you guys go to thefighterfirm.com. All right, now check this out, guys. If you're looking to repair eczema scars, burns and bruises, dark spots and blemishes, the fever blisters, diabetic ulcers, this right here is the perfect product for you guys. It's called Elo Diki Face and Body Oil. Athletes and top-ranking boxers, they're also using it after training to reduce swelling, inflammation, and to ease the pain. So get yours today. Go to elodiki.com, like them on Facebook, and follow them on Instagram.